Porphyry is arguably the most influential of the commentators on Aristotle's categories, for both East and West. His logical treatises were translated into Latin by Boethius, who therefore became one of the chief links between the philosophy of late antiquity and that of the medieval West. There is good reason to believe that in the East, too, Porphyry's commentaries were influential on the logical approach of the Cappadocian Fathers of the Church, especially St. Basil of Caesarea and St. Gregory of Nyssa. We have seen that in a 12th century context, these texts still laid the philosophical foundation of logic, whether one was a realist, a nominalist, or held some position in between. Indeed, it is in Porphyry chiefly that the issue of the ontological status of Aristotle's categories is at least raised as a question, if not settled. It is thus Porphyry who helps to launch this debate, which will be ongoing throughout the Middle Ages, even up to the present day. This video will serve as an introduction and summary of Porphyry's shorter commentary on the categories, with I hope not an excessive amount of input and interpretation from me. I will signpost the points at which my own observations come into this discussion more substantially. Porphyry begins by explaining the origins of the term categories, which he claims Aristotle borrowed from legal jargon, applying it in a new context of philosophy. Categories in this case refer to predication. Hence, whenever a simple significant expression is employed instead of what it signifies, this is called a predication. For example, this stone which I am pointing at, which we can touch and see, is a thing, and when we say about it, this is a stone, the expression stone is the predicate, kategorema, for it signifies that sort of thing, and is uttered about the thing we are pointing out, the stone. So too in other cases. Porphyry helps to establish this work of Aristotle's as a classic manual for learning logic, describing it as the most elementary one, which serves as an introduction to all the parts of philosophy. It would be best to consider it as an introduction to the physical part of philosophy, rather than to the topics, for substance, qualification and so forth as the product of nature, physis. But it definitely ought not to be given the titles on the genera of being, or on the 10 genera, because beings and their genera and species and differentiae are things, pragmata, not words, phonai. Here Porphyry states his own position, that the genera and species, etc., are existent, intelligible realities, a position the realists of the Middle Ages will want to claim as their own. But he stresses that this is not, in fact, the scope of Aristotle's categories. Rather, the matters under investigation are the significant expressions by which we speak of real things. In other words, after hinting at his own position, Porphyry makes it clear that he does not wish to involve himself in a prolonged discussion about ontology in this commentary. After listing the 10 items, Aristotle says, none of the above is said just by itself in any affirmation, but it is by the combination of these with one another that an affirmation is produced. Names and defining accounts. I claim that everything possesses both a name and either a definition, horismos, or a description, hypographe. For example, this thing has the name man and is indicated by that name, but there also exists a definition of it, for we say that man is a mortal, rational animal, capable of receiving intelligence and knowledge. Each thing is indicated not only by its name, but also by the account that defines and conveys its essence, as for example when we say that sound is the proper sensible of hearing. Since everything has both a name and a defining account, there are 4 sorts of relations that obtain between defining accounts and names. Things either share both the same name and the same defining account, or the account but not the name, or neither the account nor the name. Thus homonyms share a name but not an account. Synonyms share a name and an account. Polyonyms share an account but not a name. And heteronyms share neither an account nor a name. How is in common to be understood? Porphyry claims that the term is used in a number of different ways. For example, something that is divisible into parts, like bread or wine, is said to be in common if it is a single thing that comes to belong to those who divide it up. Property is also in common, in virtue of being one of the things that are capable of being divided up. Something that is not divisible into parts is said to be in common if it is used by several persons, such as a horse or a slave that several siblings hold in common. Something is also said to be in common if while it is being used it belongs to someone, but after use it is returned to the common store, such as a bathhouse or a theatre. Something is said to be in common in yet another way, if it is something that many can use at once without its being divided. Thus everyone present in a theatre has common access to the herald's voice at the same time, without its being divided up into smaller parts for the use of each of the members of the audience. I've taken the liberty of dividing these types of usage into roughly 3 classes, and of those 3 only 2 that differ at a more fundamental level. For of the ways to hold something in common for Porphyry, these things may either be held in a divisible way or in a non-divisible way. Of the former, things may be physically divided or temporally divided, as in the case of siblings who each have a share of the horse at different times. Of the latter, there is no division of the herald's performance at a theatre, either physically or temporally. And if I may make another aside here, it will be to say that this latter non-divisible way of holding things in common covers perhaps the sense in which the Cappadocian Fathers talk of the power and energies of God being shared by the 3 hypostases, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This has some direct bearing on the essence-energy distinction, which is crucial to Orthodox Christian theology. Here we find a historical justification for the Orthodox position, at least on logical grounds. The example of the theatrical performance is indeed a good analogy, because it is clear that the performance is not to be understood in terms of substance, but may more accurately be understood as an activity, energeia. This is a point to which I'll return subsequently when we arrive at Porphyry's discussion of substance. The extension of names. As we have seen, according to Porphyry, everything is signified either by means of names or by a definitional account. But the definitional account must correspond to the name and give an explanation of the thing only insofar as that name is used of it. For example, man is called man. This denotes all of it at once, but it also has a name, animal, which denotes it in a more compendious fashion. It can be defined by giving an account equivalent in significance to its name, i.e., mortal rational animal. Definitions ought to be convertible with names. To be convertible with a term is to be commensurate with it, that is, to have neither a greater nor a lesser extension than it does. For example, if something is a man, it is also a mortal rational animal. In the case of multiple men named Ajax, we have homonymy, because the name alone does not offer an exhaustive account of the individual. We need to disambiguate by saying Ajax, son of Telamon of Salaminia. So the definitional account that corresponds to the name and the account that reveals the essence, that is, the definition, must be different for each of the members of a class of homonymous things. There are 4 kinds of homonyms which Porphyry outlines, and which are arranged in the following tree. We have chance homonyms and homonyms from thought. And of the homonyms from thought, we have homonyms from similarity, from analogy, and of relation. The example Porphyry gives of chance homonyms are multiple persons having the same name. Homonyms from similarity include, for example, a pictorial representation of a man, so it is due to thought that I call both the living man and the statue or picture man. Homonyms from analogy include, for example, when I call the monad the source, arche, of number, the point the source of the line, a spring the source of a river. I apply this common name because of the thought they are analogous. Homonyms of relation occur when different things get their common designation from some one thing. For example, the art of medicine is a single thing, yet we call a book a medical book, a drug a medical drug, and a scalpel a medical instrument. They get these designations from the name of the art. Those things are called synonyms that have the name in common and the same account of the essence corresponding to the name, as for example, both man and ox are animal. Polyonyms are things that have several different names, but one and the same account, such as sword, sabre, and blade, and in the case of clothing, coat and cloak. The thing in question is one, as is the definition that corresponds to the name, but the names differ. Those things are called paronyms, which get the name that designates them from something else, but with a different ending. Thus, for example, the grammarian gets his name from grammar, and the brave get theirs from bravery. There are 3 things required for a paronym: something in which the thing in question must participate, a name in which it must participate. The name when applied to the thing must differ somewhat in its grammatical form. All 3 of these conditions must be met for a paronym. Simple expressions. Of things said, some are said with combination, while others are said without combination. We have combination through conjunction, for example, Socrates and Plato, or combination through accidents, for example, Socrates walks. The smallest number of classes into which I could divide beings, and the words that signify them, is 4. Beings are either universal substance or particular substance, or universal accidents or particular accidents. There is no possible division smaller than this one. The first and highest division is into 2, namely substance and accident, but substances and accidents cannot be expressed without expressing them as either universal or particulars. Being in a subject is equivalent to the term accident. The former is a definition of the latter. If something is universal, it is said of a subject, and if something is particular, it is not said of a subject. For example, man is said of a subject, but is not in a subject. Socrates is the subject. The name is not said of the subject, since there is no one else besides Socrates being indicated by the particular name. The combined account signifying universal accident would then be what is both said of a subject and in a subject. Man is spoken in 2 ways, both as a substance and as a universal, i.e., something that is not in any of the particulars. Being in something. In total, Porphyry gives 9 significations of being in something. Being in a place, being in a container, a part being in a whole, the whole being in parts, species being in the genus, genus being in the species, being in a goal, being in what has control, and form being in matter. The example he gives of being in a goal is, the objects of human concern are included in happiness, which is the goal of man. The example of being in what has control is, that matters reside in the king, i.e. in the control of the king. And the example of form being in matter is the shape of the statue being in the bronze. Aristotle only mentions 2 ways of being in something, part-whole relations and being in a container, but neither of these is accidents, for the accident cannot exist separately from what it is in. Accidents, for example, are not like Socrates, who can be separated from any particular place and still remain Socrates. He stated that something is predicated of something as of a subject, when it is stated as belonging to the essence. For example, walking is predicated of Socrates, but if we were to give the essence of Socrates, we would not say that he is walking, because walking is not predicated of Socrates as of a subject. Man is also predicated of Socrates, for you could say Socrates is a man, but if you were asked, what is Socrates, you would say that he is a man, so that man is predicated of Socrates as of a subject. What is predicated of a subject must be more universal than the subject, and its name and account must both apply to the subject. That is, they must be capable of being synonymously predicated of the subject. In other words, man is synonymous with mortal, rational animal. Genus, species, and differentia. Here genus means what is predicated in the essence of several things that differ in species. For example, animal is the genus of winged and terrestrial and aquatic, which differ in species, and it is predicated in the essence of them when it is asked what they are. For when we give the essence of any of them, we say it is an animal. Species means what is predicated in the essence of several things differing in number. For man, which is a species, is predicated of the many individual men that differ only in number, and it is predicated in the essence of each of them when it is asked what they are. A differentia is something that is predicated as an essential qualification of several different things. For example, winged is a differentia that is predicated of many things, for it is said of the swan, the crow, and the eagle. Specific differentiae and divisive differentiae. Specific differentiae are those by which the subject species is constituted and, as it were, made to be qualified, while others are divisive differentiae, those by which the genus is divided into the species that fall under it. Divisive differentiae of animal include, for example, rational, irrational, mortal, immortal, winged, living on land, etc. For one cannot predicate any of them of the genus animal. The specific differentiae, however, do apply to every subject in the species or subordinate genus. This is the end of part 1.